of the basic concepts. So here's how we did overall. So we can have a look at the questions. I won't go over every single one because you can read them and you've seen the feedback, but feel free. I'll just sort of slowly scroll through. If there's any of these you want to ask about, then by all means, stop me, throw up your hand. We can talk about them. Josh? Here, so you'll see the answers in blue. Yeah. So here's the question, and there it is with the blue as well as some bit of an explanation. So all the correct answers are in blue here. I said I'll just sort of slowly scroll through. If you want to talk about any of them, just stop me and say, hang on, I got a question. Or can you explain this? Okay, so next week, we're going to start class with a similar quiz, but we're going to have a bigger pool. Okay, so I'm going to have some questions drawn from this week's class, but I'm also going to include this same pool of questions next week. So you may get some of these questions again. Okay, so you've already seen them. You've had a chance to see the answer and the explanation. You have a chance now. We have a chance to talk about anything you're not sure about. So you'll get some of these again. Josh. Yes. Well, over time, more of them, we haven't written much code. So more of the questions are going to be coding questions, where I'll give you a line of code and you're going to have to fill in what's missing from there. And that's why the answers need to be exact, because in code, if you don't use the exact word, your code isn't going to run. Right. Okay, so yeah, almost at it right. So yes, normally most of these will be more code-based and less conceptual-based, but last week we didn't really write much code. So I wanted to check some of the basic concepts from last week. Okay. So you'll see some of these questions again. So next week's pool of questions, there'll be, I think there were 9 in this week's pool. There'll probably be 10 from today's lesson. So next week you'll get 5 questions drawn from the combination of these 9 plus the 10 questions that we're dealing with controllers today. If we have the class online, then you can do the quiz at home. Okay. The other thing that I'll do if we have the class online, I will be around on the Thursday before and the Monday. So if somebody wants to come in and have some more in-person lesson, we can find space to do that on either the Thursday or Monday, and I can work around your schedules on those dates. Okay? We'll figure that out. I'll send out an announcement to that effect. The first question was about a DLL.
Yes, this one. I actually.
Yeah.
No, I actually was.
So again, you'll get some of these again next week, and the fill in the blank part of the midterm, I'm going to use the same questions again. So you'll have a chance. So by then, if there's anything you're confused on now, you should know it because we'll have seen it potentially twice before the midterm. I'm not going to create different questions.
So next quiz, if there's a non-zero probability that we could have the exact same questions, like only these questions.
It's possible. It's unlikely you will get only questions from this pool and none from the week 2 concepts, but technically, is it possible? Yes.
All right.
It's theoretically possible that we can get the same questions every single quiz for the rest of the term.
Well, no, because in 2 weeks, the questions will be based on lessons 2 and 3, right? I won't give you question 1. So you'll get this week's questions again in next week's pool, but not thereafter. Okay, it won't be that the pools get bigger and bigger. It was that when I started doing this, it was always on the previous week, and based on student feedback, some students said it would actually be helpful if you could also hit topics that we did 2 weeks ago, and we can see those things again to reinforce them. So we kind of found that 2 weeks was sort of a good sweet spot, far enough for review without the scope getting too big. Okay, so let's open up our project from last week. So it should appear in our list of recent projects. I shouldn't have to browse for it. Now, my plan for today is to cover controllers. Some of the stuff we want to do may not take all that long. So if we get done what we want to do, I'm going to start bringing in some of the things from next week's lesson as well, okay, on views. And I'm trying to kind of carve out some space in the semester so that we can do an online payment. I think we talked about that last week. So here's our solution as we left it off. How do I start the server and get this running? I could hit the play button. That isn't my preferred method. However, what's the limitation if I just press the play button here? Right, it puts us in debug mode, so we can't actually change any code while the debugger's active. So how can I launch this without starting my debugger? Josh? No, all of those will start my debugger.
Debug, start with that debug.
Right, so I'm going to use the debug menu, and in here, there's the option to start my project, but don't launch the debugger. So that way the code window is unlocked. So it doesn't need to build because we didn't change anything yet. It just launches the last compiled version as we left it last week.
I don't remember if you do changes, do you have to restart the server, or is it?
No, when you do start without debugging, you just build and then you can refresh.
Okay.
So here's where we left off. We added an about link to our layout file, the navbar, and then we added, in our home controller, we added a layout method, and that layout method returned a view called about. All right. So we'll do a few things here just to customize this a little bit before we get into playing around with our controller. Put a couple links up in week 2 that we may want to look at. Let's go back to my week 2 folder. One is this just gives us the default Bootstrap 4 template. So just so this doesn't look quite so dull and as a boilerplate site, I'm I'm going to use Bootswatch. Has anybody used this before or heard of it? Bootswatch is a site that just offers some free, fairly simple Bootstrap themes. So if I click on this link, it jumps me over here, and it's got a bunch of free themes. So what I'm going to do is add a couple of these style sheets. I'm going to download these into our project. So you can use any theme you like. You can also just choose to ignore this. So I'm going to scroll down. I think I'm actually going to grab this one, the Yeti theme. So I want 2 files from here. Yeah, on GitHub. It's in weekly learning tools and resources. So just a tip moving forward, if you miss class, you want to do this before you show up the next Friday. The other thing that will happen once you download, so if you need my project, we did talk about this last week, but I'll just mention it again. So I'll maybe just go. I'll just go to last week's project on GitHub for a minute. Here it is. If you need my files, you don't want to clone my project. If you clone my project, it downloads a copy, but then your project is still tied to my GitHub repository, which you don't want because then you can't push any changes. So what you want to do is download a zip that's not cloned, so then it's your own unattached copy. All right. That's odd, but I'll fix it if it is. Thanks for letting me know. That is the right URL. It's doing it now? Okay. So if you download it as a zip, you need to download the zip and you need to extract it. You can then open the .sln file. That will open the project in Visual Studio. But there'll be one thing you're missing. When you download someone else's Visual Studio project from GitHub, remember we've got a gitignore file. And gitignore ignores all of the dependencies of the project. So if you download my file and go into the dependencies, you probably won't see them here. So when we grab a repository from GitHub and open in Visual Studio, typically you've got to right-click the solution and choose this option, restore the NuGet packages. Because gitignore leaves the dependencies out when we upload to GitHub. So if you download a project, those dependencies aren't attached. Gitignore ignores them. So rather than uploading and downloading those dependencies, you just have to do a restore. Yep, right-click and choose Restore NuGet Packages. It's much the same when we download somebody's Node code. Typically in Node, all the Node modules don't get included on GitHub. So what we do to download any packages with Node is once we download it, if we run the command npm I, that then reads the packages.json file, reads all the dependencies that are required and downloads them all from npm. So this is the Node equivalent of restore NuGet packages in .NET. They do the same thing. Did you get a copy? Did you get it?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I want to do to make a quick and dirty theme for our project is I'm going to grab these two files and overwrite the default Bootstrap files that Visual Studio gave us. So you can pick any theme. I'll just click on download. I'm going to download these one at a time. So I'll download the bootstrap.min.css, and here's where it goes. So in our project, here's my solution. And if I go into www, library, and Bootstrap, there's the full path. All the way in here, these are the default files Visual Studio gave us for Bootstrap. So I'm going to override the default one with this particular theme. I'm going to do it for both the minified as well as the full version of these files. So I'm going to overwrite what's currently here. You can skip this step if you don't really care. It'll say you've already got this file. Do you want to replace it? Yes, I'm going to replace the one that came with Visual Studio with this particular theme. And then I'm going to do the same with the unminified. Yeah, so notice I'm inside of my project, www root, library, Bootstrap, dist CSS. So you can see the file path in my Explorer window. So there's generally two different locations in our project folder for CSS. Any third-party CSS files, we tend to put them inside of library, meaning this is an external library. We also have our own internal CSS. So I'm just going to save. And now if I refresh, we should get our theme applied. Yeah, that worked great. I'm super happy with that. What happened there?
It loaded the CSS file.
That's interesting. Oh, okay, that file didn't download properly because my file's empty. I better try that again. There. Okay.
Yeah, the same thing happened to me. It didn't change.
You know what? It didn't download properly. When I first looked at the size of the file on disk, it said 0 kilobytes. And when I opened it, there was no text in it. Yep. Did you use a different theme? So probably my guess is the theme you downloaded, I'm guessing that the default for the links are that they're there, but they're in white. If you view the source, they're probably there. Okay, I can come and have a look at it. Maybe what I'll do in my layout is I'm curious if I just change my class now to navbar inverse. I might get. I'll change it to navbar dark. Let's see what that does. I mean, I don't want to get too carried away with it.
Does it even change? It looks like your thing didn't change at all.
It did change. The font's different.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. I'll explain the difference. So we've got two CSS folders. In general, the top level CSS folder, this is for our own CSS. So it comes with a default style sheet of our own called site. That's inside here. The second one is inside of library. So that's typically where we would store third-party style sheets. Would be inside of library. So these are the bootstrap files, and this is our own. And the site's using both of them. Yeah. Those were here. I didn't take those. We didn't touch those. Grid and reboot. Yes. The min is actually here. I don't know that the min, yeah, the min actually isn't, it's not being used. It's a fallback. So if it doesn't find this, it's using the minified one. Yes, they're still in the same place. Sorry, if it doesn't find it from the CDN. So I don't actually want to use the CDN here. So I could even just take out this fallback ref and link directly to my I'm actually going to comment that one. So I don't want to use the CDN. I want to use the theme I downloaded. That's right. I took the fallback href and I just made that, yeah, in layout. Okay. So I'm now using my theme. So notice also we've got this environment include. So when we're in development mode, we get the full bootstrap. Outside of development, we use the minified one. Better performance. Shouldn't affect what we see here.
Yeah.
I was also playing around with this. I'll download one of these later and throw it on Blackboard. I use this free logo maker to make us a logo. We can always grab one of these and throw them in our site. Yeah, I put the link up here as well. It's in week 2. You can go to looka.com. You can make your own logo. Gives you different icon sets, fonts, colors, and then it suggests, asks you what you're building, and it suggests a whole bunch of stuff. So I put that link in here as well. So you can play around with it. I may grab a logo and throw it in here. This one? So I can throw that, you can make your own, or I can also throw this up on my course link and you can grab it. So we'll just. This logo is probably way too big as well. We'll probably have to cut it down, but I can put on the link to it.
How do we check our bootstrap version?
By default, it comes with 4. Is my course link generally this slow? Yes. Fantastic. All right, so I'm throwing the logo up. Trying to throw the logo up in the week 2 folder. So there it is. So you can grab it. And then I'm going to want to create a place in my project for the images because we don't actually have that yet. Question? Sorry, whenever you. Yeah, what does the error say? Okay. If you're getting that issue, here's a couple things you can try. First, click on Build and Rebuild Solution. So that actually deletes the old DLL. Normally, Build just updates the DLL. Rebuild actually deletes it and then regenerates it. Try that first. Build and rebuild. Try that. Didn't work. Restart Visual Studio is next. So what I'm going to do now is inside of my www root, I'll come back to your issue. So I want to make a new folder in here. I've already made it. So it's sort of weird. They set up in www root, they set up a CSS and a JS and a lib folder. They don't actually give us an image folder. So if you right click your www root, you can add a new folder and call it IMG. So inside of www root, add new folder. Call it IMG, and you can save, you can grab that logo if you want it off of my course link, and you can save the logo into your IMG folder.
Sorry, where did you put it?
In Weekly Learning Week 2. Let me know if restarting Visual Studio makes a difference. Okay, so in that case, you need to install the .NET Core 2.2 SDK. So we did that in class last week. So you can just do a quick, I think it's just .NET. Where is it? Yeah. .NET.microsoft.com/download. We did it, download and install this in class last week. Weekly Learning Week 2. So are you using Visual Studio 2019 or 2017? If you're using 17, install this one. If you're using 19, install this one. You probably have to close Visual Studio to run that install. So in here, in my layout file on my line 25, I have this link with an anchor. It's class of navbar brand, and the link says lowballers. So I'm going to try replacing this with our image, although our image is probably going to be way too big. I may have to crop it and re-upload it. So in here, if I put in an image, so I'm going to try and put our logo in there instead of just a text for our site name. So that's inside of this link that starts with a class equals navbar brand. It's my line 25, right inside the container div in our navbar. It's probably going to be gigantic, but we'll have a look and see how bad it looks. Yeah, I just want to see what it looks like for a second. Yeah, it's a little bit large. Okay, so I'll need to shrink that. You could. So yes, I could use CSS to resize it, but I'm still loading an awfully big image when I don't need to. It'd be much better to actually scale the image to something much smaller. So yeah, let me actually see what size this actually is. Yeah, the actual image is 1653 by, so yeah, we want something much smaller. I want it to be like about 100 pixels high. It's GIMP. It's free, basically kind of like free version of Photoshop. So actually, sorry? We could, but then it's loading a much bigger file, which is much, yeah, I could just add a class to the CSS and attach that class, but I'll actually, rather than load such a big image, I'll shrink it. So let me scale it down and I'll re-upload it.
I resized mine and painted it. It looked pretty bad.
Let me re-upload this one.
Yes, you go layout, see image HTML, and then you change your actual image tag, like after index and before the anchor.
Now I've overwritten my file. There, that's a little better. Sure. So I created this IMG folder inside of www. So www root, those are for all of our public assets. So images, media, JavaScript, CSS. So I've created the IMG file and I've saved the logo there. I've re-uploaded the resized version to my course link so you can download it rather than using Paint. So now it actually looks sort of okay. Okay, we'll take a break in a second. I'll come have a look. Sure. So all I did was in this line that a class equals navbar brand. The template just took our application name and wrote lowballers, created a link to the homepage there. So I've just taken out the text and replaced it with the image tag you see in blue. So this way our logo is now appearing here.
What? Did you put it under share?
Under www. I created the IMG folder under www root. The CSS, JS, and lib folders are there by default. Visual Studio builds those. I built an IMG folder and saved my logo there. Later on, we'll use this IMG folder when we start populating our store with products. We're going to want images of the products. So we're going to store the image files of the products in here as well, maybe in a subfolder. So we can add a product, we can upload a picture along with it.
Are you going to push?
I did push the new picture. It's smaller, yeah. Oh, sorry, I haven't finished saving. Sorry, the new picture is there now. If you just refresh week 2, you can get the smaller logo now. Sorry, I thought I had finished the process. I had to click overwrite and save. No, so I've taken the original text of lowballers and set that as the alt property. So if the logo doesn't load, at least it will say lowballers in its place. Okay, So again, I'm just highlighting the new code. So what you see in blue just replaces the text blow ballers, which was there originally. And it gives us, Visual Studio also gives us a default favicon, which we can leave for now. It just gives us this little web page. But if we wanted, we could probably also make one with this. It's got to be square, and there's favicon makers that we could do it and overwrite that. So maybe try a different theme. Why don't you try a different theme? And yeah, why don't you download a different theme? If the one you downloaded broke it.
If the theme we downloaded doesn't apply at all, like it just doesn't change anything,
Try a different one.
let's try a different one. Tried installing the latest Bootstrap. Didn't change that.
Try a different one. Okay, so it's about 2 o'clock. Let's take a pause here. I know a few people are having a few issues. I'll come and have a look, and we'll come back in about 10 minutes. Okay, I'll stop the video stream now.